Camden, South Carolina, is a picturesque town that often feels far removed from the violence that plagues larger cities. Yet, on February 25th, 2014, the peace of this tight-knit community was shattered when 18-year-old Sarah Miller vanished without a trace. Known for her radiant smile and endless determination, Sarah balanced her life between her studies and her job as a waitress at a local diner. Her dream of attending college seemed within reach as she meticulously saved every paycheck. The day began like any other. Sarah attended her morning classes and returned home to work on a personal project, a car radio installation with a close friend, Jessica Harper. The two spent hours trying to figure it out, but eventually gave up when the task proved more complicated than anticipated. Around 9 p.m., Sarah said goodbye to Jessica, climbed into her weathered Toyota Corolla, and drove off into the quiet Camden night. When Sarah failed to show up for her shift at the diner the following day, it was immediately out of character. Margaret Miller, Sarah's mother, became alarmed when repeated calls to her daughter's cell went unanswered. Margaret reported her missing later that evening, a wave of dread overtaking her as hours ticked by. The police initiated their search, canvassing neighborhoods, parks, and the winding roads surrounding Camden. Flyers with Sarah's picture, her blue eyes sparkling beneath long auburn hair, were soon plastered across town. Friends, family, and co-workers joined the search, retracing Sarah's usual routes. However, their hopes dimmed when 3 days later, on February 28th, Sarah's car was found abandoned on a desolate dirt road near Hikes Creek. The vehicle appeared untouched, save for a few scuff marks on the rear bumper. The sense of dread deepened when a search party discovered Sarah's lifeless body half a mile into the woods. She was hidden beneath a thin layer of leaves and branches, her bright future cruelly extinguished. Evidence at the scene, including marks on her neck and broken fingernails, indicated strangulation, a struggle that spoke to Sarah's fight against her killer. Detective David Wayne, a seasoned investigator with the Camden Police Department, was assigned to lead the case. For him, this was not just another crime, it was a personal mission to deliver justice for the Miller family. His initial focus fell on two individuals Sarah had been in contact with before her disappearance: Lewis and Brian Stanley, local brothers with a reputation for petty crime. Both men denied any involvement, claiming to have alibis for the night in question. The investigation stalled, frustration mounting as the town clamored for answers. But the breakthrough came from an unexpected source: surveillance footage from a gas station miles away. The grainy footage showed Sarah climbing into a dark sedan at 9:47 p.m. on the night she vanished. The vehicle's distinctive damage to its front fender became a critical lead. The question now was simple: who drove the car that carried Sarah Miller into the woods and to her death? The sighting of Sarah Miller entering the dark sedan sparked a flurry of activity within Detective Wayne's team. Surveillance footage from nearby intersections and businesses was meticulously reviewed, narrowing down the sedan's make and model. It was identified as a 2008 Nissan Altima with a damaged front bumper. Detective Wayne issued a public plea for information, urging Camden residents to report sightings of the vehicle. Days passed with no promising leads. Frustration mounted within the Miller family, who now had to endure Sarah's funeral, a heartbreaking affair attended by hundreds of mourners. Margaret Miller clung to her daughter's favorite childhood stuffed animal during the service, while friends shared stories of Sarah's kindness and ambition. The tragic loss resonated deeply in the community. Then, a tip came in from a local mechanic. Thomas Kelly, a 29-year-old acquaintance of Sarah's, had recently brought in his dark-colored Nissan Altima for repair. The car's description matched the one seen on surveillance footage. Kelly had a clean-cut image, working as a real estate agent, and he had no prior criminal record. But Wayne's instincts told him there was more to Kelly than met the eye. Police approached Kelly at his home in Camden's affluent outskirts. His demeanor was calm but evasive when asked about his whereabouts on the night of February 25th. He claimed he had spent the evening alone at home, a statement that failed to satisfy Detective Wayne. The Altima was impounded for forensic analysis, and Kelly was placed under observation as detectives worked to build their case. The breakthrough came when investigators found a single strand of auburn hair lodged in the car's carpeting. A DNA match to Sarah Miller confirmed the chilling truth: Sarah had been in Kelly's vehicle. Further evidence, a faint trace of her blood on the passenger seat, indicated she had been injured. With this evidence in hand, detectives interrogated Kelly once more. His calm exterior began to crack as inconsistencies in his story piled up. Phone records revealed that Sarah and Kelly had exchanged text messages earlier that evening, though their tone remained ambiguous. Kelly admitted to knowing Sarah but claimed their interactions were strictly friendly. Kelly's past began to unravel under scrutiny. While he had no criminal record, interviews with former coworkers and acquaintances painted a picture of a man with a troubling temper and a tendency to manipulate those around him. A chilling profile emerged, pointing to an individual capable of harboring dark secrets beneath a polished surface. On March 12th, detectives formally charged Thomas Kelly with Sarah Miller's murder. While the arrest brought a semblance of relief to the grieving Miller family, the questions surrounding Sarah's final moments and Kelly's motive remained hauntingly unanswered. The trial would become one of the most closely followed in Camden's history, as the community demanded justice for the young woman whose life was so brutally cut short. The courtroom was packed to capacity on the opening day of Thomas Kelly's trial. Reporters jostled for position outside, while inside, Sarah Miller's family sat in silent anguish. Margaret Miller clutched a photograph of Sarah as opening arguments began, her gaze fixed on Kelly, who appeared cold and detached in his tailored suit. Prosecutor Emily Vargas wasted no time outlining the state's case. She described a man who had used charm to gain Sarah's trust and ultimately lured her into his car under false pretenses. Vargas detailed the forensic evidence: Sarah's DNA found in Kelly's vehicle, the timeline of text messages between them, and the surveillance footage that placed Kelly's car in the site where Sarah's body was discovered. The state's narrative was chillingly clear. Thomas Kelly was a predator who saw an opportunity and acted on it with devastating consequences. Kelly's defense attorney, Robert Long, painted a starkly different picture. He claimed that while Kelly had indeed been in contact with Sarah, their interactions were friendly and consensual. Lang argued that the evidence linking Kelly to the crime scene was circumstantial at best and suggested that another individual, perhaps someone Sarah had encountered after leaving Kelly's car, could have been responsible for her death. The defense sought to cast doubt on every aspect of the state's case, emphasizing the lack of a clear motive. The trial unfolded with gut-wrenching testimony. Jessica Harper, Sarah's best friend, recounted the last time she saw Sarah, describing her cheerful demeanor and the excitement she expressed about fixing her car radio. Margaret Miller testified next, her voice trembling as she described the days of agonizing uncertainty before Sarah's body was found. But it was the forensic experts who provided the most damning evidence. DNA analyst Dr. Carla Hewitt explained how the strand of Sarah's hair found in Kelly's car was an exact match, and crime scene investigator Mark Eldridge detailed the presence of Sarah's blood on the passenger seat. Eldridge also noted subtle but telling signs of a struggle marks on the inside of the car door, consistent with Sarah attempting to escape. The prosecution's final bombshell came in the form of cell phone triangulation data. Detective David Wayne took the stand to explain how Kelly's phone had been in the vicinity of Hagues Creek on the night of February 25th, contradicting his earlier claim that he had stayed home. Despite the mountain of evidence, Kelly remained emotionless throughout the proceedings. His lack of visible remorse only served to reinforce the prosecution's argument that he was a calculating killer. As the trial continued, the defense sought to poke holes in the state's case. Long called character witnesses to vouch for Kelly, portraying him as a successful and kind-hearted man incapable of such a heinous act. A former colleague described him as calm under pressure, while a neighbor insisted he was a polite, helpful person. However, these accounts were overshadowed when the prosecution introduced new evidence: Kelly's internet search history. In the weeks leading up to Sarah's murder, Kelly had visited websites discussing how to dispose of a body and avoid detection. These searches, combined with his attempts to clean his car after Sarah's disappearance, painted a damning portrait of premeditation. Lang scrambled to counter this revelation, claiming the searches were unrelated and could not definitively link Kelly to the crime. But the jury's expressions betrayed their skepticism. Then, a startling twist emerged. A former girlfriend of Kelly's, Laura Bennett, came forward to testify. Her testimony, though unrelated to Sarah's case, revealed troubling patterns in Kelly's behavior. Laura described how he had once driven her to an isolated area during an argument and threatened to leave her there. She recounted his controlling tendencies in moments of sudden, inexplicable rage. Kelly's defense team objected, arguing that Laura's testimony was prejudicial, but the judge allowed it to remain on record. The prosecution leveraged this to highlight a potential escalation in Kelly's behavior, from psychological manipulation to physical violence. As the trial approached its climax, public interest surged. Camden residents filled the courthouse each day, and national media began to cover the story. For Sarah's family, every revelation was a fresh wound, but they remained steadfast in their pursuit of justice. The final days of testimony included Kelly himself taking the stand. Against his lawyer's advice, he maintained his innocence, claiming that Sarah had willingly entered his car and that he had dropped her off safely at a gas station. His testimony was riddled with inconsistencies, and his lack of emotion further alienated the jury. When closing arguments concluded, the courtroom was silent as the jury deliberated. Hours stretched into days, the weight of the decision bearing down on the 12 individuals tasked with delivering a verdict. For Sarah's family, every second was an eternity, the hope for justice mingling with the fear of disappointment. Finally, after 3 days, the jury returned. Their decision would change the lives of everyone involved and finally bring the truth of Sarah Miller's final moments to light. The courtroom was tense as the foreman of the jury rose to deliver the verdict. The judge, after confirming that a decision had been reached, asked for the result. On the charge of first-degree murder, the foreman began, "We find the defendant, Thomas Kelly, guilty." A collective gasp rippled through the room, followed by murmurs from spectators. Sarah Miller's family clasped hands tightly, tears streaming down Margaret Miller's face. Across the courtroom, Kelly remained stoic, his expression betraying no emotion as the verdict was read. The judge addressed the courtroom, thanking the jury for their service and announcing that sentencing would take place the following week. For the Miller family, the guilty verdict was a bittersweet moment. Justice for Sarah had been achieved, but no ruling could erase the pain of her loss. In the days leading up to sentencing, public opinion was polarized. Some in the community viewed Kelly's conviction as a triumph for justice, while others questioned whether the evidence truly warranted such a severe verdict. Defense attorney Robert Lang filed a motion for an appeal, citing procedural errors and claiming the prosecution's case relied too heavily on circumstantial evidence. At the sentencing hearing, Margaret Miller delivered a victim impact statement. Her voice trembled as she described the profound void by Sarah's death. "Sarah was our light," she said, her hands gripping the podium. "She had so much life ahead of her, so much kindness to give to the world, that was stolen from her and from us." Judge Leonard Harlow, known for his measured rulings, addressed Kelly directly before delivering his sentence. "The evidence presented in this trial leaves no doubt in my mind that you, Thomas Kelly, are responsible for the senseless and cruel death of Sarah Miller. Your actions have inflicted immeasurable pain on her family and this community. You must face the consequences." Kelly was sentenced to 50 years in prison without the possibility of parole. As he was escorted out of the courtroom in handcuffs, the Miller family embraced. Justice had been served, but the grief remained an ever-present weight. By 2022, Thomas Kelly's case had faded from the headlines, though its memory lingered in Camden. For Sarah's family, life had moved forward in slow, painful increments. Margaret Miller became an advocate for victims' families, working with local organizations to support those navigating similar losses. The Miller family honored Sarah's memory in other ways, too. They set up a scholarship fund in her name, aimed at helping young women pursue higher education, a dream Sarah never got to achieve. Each year, a Memorial 5,000 run in Camden brought the community together, raising money for the fund and keeping Sarah's legacy alive. Meanwhile, in South Carolina State Penitentiary, Thomas Kelly's life had taken a dark turn. Inmates and guards alike described him as a man who kept to himself, rarely speaking and showing no interest in rehabilitation programs. His demeanor, once controlled and polished, had given way to paranoia and bouts of anger. On November 17, 2022, Kelly was found dead in his cell. Its contents were never released to the public, fueling speculation about whether Kelly had admitted to further crimes or expressed remorse for Sarah's murder. The prison declined to comment, and the case was closed quickly, leaving behind more questions than answers. For Margaret and the rest of the Miller family, Kelly's death brought a complicated mix of emotions. Relief that he was no longer a threat mingled with frustration at the lack of closure his suicide provided. "We'll never know why he did what he did or if there was more to the story," Margaret said in an interview, "but I refuse to let his actions define Sarah's memory." The annual 5,000 run that year saw record turnout. Friends, strangers, and community members gathered to celebrate Sarah's life and the enduring impact of her kindness. Amid the crowd, Margaret stood quietly, watching as runners pinned their bibs and prepared for the race. In the face of tragedy, she had found purpose and a way to ensure that Sarah's story would never be forgotten. The question of what drove Thomas Kelly to murder Sarah Miller may never be fully answered. But in Camden, the focus remained on preserving her legacy, a beacon of light in a world often marked by darkness. Thomas Kelly's death marked the end of an era for the Miller family and the town of Camden, but it left lingering mysteries that gnawed at those closest to the case. Detective David Wayne, now retired, found himself revisiting the details of Sarah Miller's murder in the quiet of his home. The strands of evidence had led to Kelly, but some pieces of the puzzle still felt incomplete. Kelly's note, withheld by authorities, became the subject of rampant speculation. Rumors swirled about its contents. Some believed it contained a confession to other crimes, while others thought it implicated another person in Sarah's death. The prison's decision to seal the note under security and privacy concerns only fueled these theories. Margaret Miller, too, struggled with the lingering uncertainties. She couldn't shake the feeling that something had been left unsaid. "I want to believe the case is closed," she told a local journalist during a reflective interview. "But a part of me wonders if we ever truly got the whole truth." The community, meanwhile, remained divided. For some, Kelly's death was the end of a nightmare. For others, it was a convenient way to bury a story that had never been fully told. The years after Kelly's conviction had seen whispers about his behavior and possible connections to other missing persons cases. Detective Wayne admitted privately that he had always wondered if Kelly's actions that night were part of a larger, more sinister pattern. Nearly a decade after Sarah's murder, a chance discovery reignited interest in the case. In early 2023, a construction crew working near Higgs Creek unearthed an old, rusted toolbox buried in the soil. Inside were items that initially appeared mundane: a length of nylon cord, a stained work glove, and a small digital camera. The camera was sent to the South Carolina State Crime Lab, where technicians managed to recover several images from its corrupted memory card. Among the photographs were blurry shots of wooded areas and rural backroads eerily similar to the location where Sarah's body had been found. The most chilling discovery, however, was an image of Sarah herself, taken at night. Her face was partially illuminated by a car's interior light, her expression uneasy. The timestamp on the photo placed it mere hours before her death. Detective Wayne, now consulting for the Camden Police Department on a part-time basis, was brought in to review the findings. The camera didn't match any evidence collected during Kelly's trial, suggesting it belonged to someone else. This raised unsettling questions. Was Kelly working alone, or was there another person involved in Sarah's abduction? Margaret Miller was devastated by the new revelations. "Just when we thought we could start to heal, this rips everything wide open again," she said in a tearful statement. Despite the pain, she pushed for the investigation to continue. The nylon cord, now believed to be the murder weapon, was subjected to advanced forensic analysis. Investigators found trace DNA on the cord that did not match Sarah, Kelly, or any other known individuals in the database. This was the first tangible evidence that someone else might have been involved. The discovery shifted the narrative surrounding Sarah's case. Media outlets revisited the trial, questioning whether Kelly had acted alone or if the justice system had missed a crucial accomplice. For the Miller family, it was a grim reminder that the past was never as settled as it seemed. Detective Wayne, though retired, felt a renewed sense of duty. "If there's someone else out there who played a role in this, they need to be found," he told local reporters. "Sarah deserves that much." The question now wasn't just who had killed Sarah Miller, but whether the killer had truly been brought to justice or if the case had only scratched the surface of a darker truth. The discovery of the toolbox and the haunting photo of Sarah Miller sent shockwaves through Camden. While the case had long been considered closed, this new evidence forced Detective David Wayne to confront a troubling possibility. Had Thomas Kelly been working with someone else? The recovered DNA from the nylon cord was entered into state and federal databases, but no matches emerged. This unknown profile hinted at a shadowy accomplice, someone who had managed to avoid detection for years. Detective Wayne began piecing together the timeline of Sarah's last hours, hoping to uncover gaps that might explain how another individual could have been involved. The photograph of Sarah in the car became a central focus. The angle suggested it had been taken by someone sitting in the driver's seat, but Kelly had testified during his trial that he was alone with Sarah that night. Could Kelly have lied, or was there an accomplice he had shielded? Margaret Miller, though deeply shaken, became an active participant in the investigation. She met with Detective Wayne to share details about Sarah's relationships and routines, hoping some overlooked clue might emerge. "If there's someone else out there who hurt my daughter, I need to know," she told Wayne. The police re-examined the evidence from Kelly's trial, focusing on his phone records. One unexplained call, made shortly after Sarah entered Kelly's car, led investigators to a disposable burner phone purchased at a convenience store just days before the murder. Surveillance footage from the store showed a man with his face obscured by a baseball cap buying the phone, but his identity remained a mystery. Wayne pursued every lead, revisiting witnesses who had testified during the trial. Jessica Harper, Sarah's best friend, revealed a chilling detail she had overlooked years earlier. In the days leading up to Sarah's disappearance, Sarah had mentioned feeling uneasy about someone who had recently started visiting the diner where she worked. She described the man as quiet, always watching, and never leaving a tip. Jessica had assumed it was harmless at the time, but now the detail took on new significance. As the investigation deepened, the focus shifted to identifying the mysterious diner patron. A review of credit card receipts from the diner eventually led to a name, Jacob Rains, a 38-year-old truck driver who frequently passed through Camden. Rains had no criminal record but lived a transient lifestyle, making him difficult to track. Police located Rains in a small town in Georgia, where he was questioned about his movements in February 2014. He denied knowing Sarah or Thomas Kelly, but inconsistencies in his answers raised red flags. A search warrant for his property yielded a shocking discovery, a collection of keepsakes from various women, including a keychain belonging to Sarah Miller. Rains was arrested, and forensic analysis connected him to the DNA found on the nylon cord. Under interrogation, Rains confessed to being present the night Sarah was killed but claimed he had only helped Kelly dispose of her body. He painted himself as a reluctant accomplice coerced by Kelly's manipulations. The new evidence painted a disturbing picture. Kelly had not acted alone. While Kelly had been the primary architect of Sarah's abduction and murder, Rains had played a critical role in ensuring her body would never be found. Rains was charged with accessory to murder and obstruction of justice. During his trial, his chilling lack of remorse became evident. While he downplayed his involvement, the evidence suggested he had been far more complicit than he admitted. Rains was sentenced to 25 years in prison, bringing a grim sense of closure to the case. For Margaret Miller, the truth of what happened to Sarah was a heavy burden. "It doesn't bring her back," she said after Rains' sentencing. "But at least now we know the full story. At least now we can finally let her rest." The annual 5,000 run in Sarah's memory grew in prominence, drawing participants from across the state. The scholarship fund continued to support young women pursuing education, ensuring that Sarah's dreams lived on through others. Detective David Wayne officially retired from investigative work after Rains' conviction, though the case remained close to his heart. "No matter how many cases you work, some stay with you forever," he said in a final interview. The story of Sarah Miller, a bright, kind young woman whose life was stolen too soon, served as both a cautionary tale and a testament to the resilience of those who loved her. Though her killers were brought to justice, Sarah's legacy remained rooted in the goodness she brought to the world. And in Camden, her memory endured, a beacon of hope against the darkness of violence and loss.